Thank you to the community of WAMU members who give generously to keep this service strong.
Art, creating winter magic with floral displays, ice skating, and exhibitions featuring paintings on paper by Mark Rothko and iconic photographs by Dorothea Lange. More at nga.gov.
You're listening to NewsHour on the BBC World Service. I'm Celia Hatton, coming to you from Maji Square, a busy entertainment spot in central Taipei. You might be able to hear the karaoke nearby. I'm not far away from a polling booth that's set to open in approximately 12 hours' time, marking the start of voting in Taiwan's general election. Well, in the past few days, we've witnessed a frantic final bout of campaigning for the major parties vying for the presidency and parliamentary seats. It's come down to a nail-biting battle between the two main parties that have dominated Taiwanese politics for decades. The Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, currently in power, and the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT party. In a few moments, we'll bring you an interview with a spokesperson from the ruling DPP, where we discuss Taiwan's tense relationship with Beijing. But first, I spent some time this week with the opposition KMT party. It ruled Taiwan before it transitioned to become a democracy. Since Taiwan's first presidential elections in 1996, the KMT has positioned itself as the stable option that can ensure Taiwan's future by forging a friendly relationship with China. I went on the campaign trail with the KMT, riding along in the media vehicle as part of a motorcade rally through the streets of Taipei. Flanked by police motorcycles, I squashed alongside camera people and photographers onto an open-top truck. Behind us, another open-air vehicle with glass sides carrying the KMT's presidential contender, Hou You-yi, and a local parliamentary candidate, a 34-year-old woman named Xu Qiaxin. Ms. Xu waved and shouted to supporters who lined the roads, carrying the KMT's trademark blue flags. Although for long stretches of time, there was no one to wave at. Many bystanders ignored the motorcade. But there was a crowd of mostly gray-haired older supporters waiting when the motorcade stopped, eager for a quick handshake. Street rally over, we joined Xu Qiaxin, the woman vying for a parliamentary seat. I started by asking her how she got into politics.
My grandfather, he was a soldier. I am very proud of my grandfather. So I think everybody in Taiwan, we have to do our best to protect our country. So we found that after DPP ruling Taiwan for 7 to 8 years, the cross-strait becomes more and more dangerous, and it will inflict the region's peace. And we are afraid of we will be facing a war. We know that we have to defend ourselves, but we are trying our best to let the war not be happening in Taiwan. We think that if we have a dialogue with the mainland China, we can have trade and we still have our sovereignties. If there happens a war in East Asia, in cross-strait, that means right now we will have 3 war fields: Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. So we are trying to avoid the war.
Are you saying you think that Taiwan is closer to war now than it ever was before?
Yes, ever was before. We think that peace is the basic of every dream. If we don't have the peace, and we have nothing.
That was the opposition KMT party's local candidate, Xu Qiaxin, speaking to me at her campaign rally earlier this week. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, today I also sat down with Vincent Shao, head of international affairs for the ruling DPP. He's also a spokesperson for presidential candidate William Lai's campaign. In contrast to the KMT, which is traditionally in favor of promoting ties with China, the DPP says it's willing to engage in talks with China, but only on equal terms. I asked Vincent Shao first about shipments of American weapons for the first time paid for by the U.S. I asked, how is it possible to argue that the DPP is maintaining the status quo?
If we can accept that deterrence is important to maintaining peace and stability anywhere in the world, but particularly here in the cross-strait situation, then of course strengthening our defense is important to maintaining that peace and stability there. And so we have to make clear that we are engaged in further arms procurements and developing defensive weaponry and building asymmetric capabilities. I mean, the purpose of all of this is not to engage in conflict, is to ensure that war remains an unthinkable option for any party involved. I mean, none of the purpose of everything that you've mentioned have been offensive in nature. All of them have been defensive in nature, and they're designed precisely to defend ourselves and to show other people that we have the capacity to defend ourselves.
You say it's deterrence, it's meant for defense, but could it be interpreted by Beijing as something that's changing the status quo, that is seen as a threat? I mean, during President Tsai's time in office, her mandate has been marked by a lack of communication with Beijing. We've seen growing tensions across the strait, increased military exercises by China. We've seen balloons being floated across Taiwan. I mean, tensions are rising. Is this really a failure of the DPP to maintain an open and to keep tensions down? Has this been a failure?
In terms of all these tensions that you've mentioned, these are all unilateral actions that have been taken by the PRC. At the same time that here in Taiwan, we've made our commitment clear that the status quo is something supported by the people of Taiwan. We don't want changes to the status quo, and certainly we want to have a peaceful and stable cross-strait relationship. President Tsai Ing-wen over the past 8 years hasn't changed her cross-strait policy. She's been very consistent, and we are a democracy. Her cross-strait policies has been validated again and again through support from the people of Taiwan.
You have compared Taiwan with Ukraine, facing similar challenges. How much do you think that Taiwan can rely on U.S. support, given that we've seen President Biden failing to secure new aid for Ukraine?
Well, I think the situation between Ukraine and Taiwan, obviously, there are similarities in the sense that both of us face giant authoritarian neighbors that are intention to bring us or them under their fold by force if necessary. But there's also major differences. You know, defense is ultimately our own responsibility. I mean, ultimately it is. Deterrence is ultimately our responsibility as well. And how we can build a safer, more prosperous, stable region. I mean, I think everybody has a shared interest in that, but ultimately that main responsibility falls to the people of Taiwan. And so we've looked at different lessons in different situations around the world, and we've made a determination over the past 8 years that we're going to enhance our own self-defense. I mean, we've about doubled the defense budget. We've, again, lengthened conscription 4 months to 12 months. We've brought in new capabilities. You know, we're undergoing a transition asymmetric. I mean, all of this is designed to build deterrence and then take the future of Taiwan back into our own hands and play a very strong proactive role in maintaining peace and stability here.
The KMT has said that this is an election, a decision to make between war and peace. If this election is not about that, what would you say it's about?
Well, first, it's just factually untrue that this election is about war and peace, because every single political party here, every single candidate wants to see peace. I mean, nobody wants to see war. What we really see this electoral campaign as about is a choice between democracy and authoritarianism. It's not to say that the opposition party being elected, you know, by itself will lead to authoritarianism here in Taiwan, but it's about choices, about who Taiwan feels kinship and alignment with, whether we want to continue to enhance our relations with democratic partners from around the world, whether we want to continue to walk strongly down this path of protecting our democracy despite the many challenges faced, or do we want to recalibrate and bring ourselves closer to authoritarian powers that may not have our best interests at heart?
That was Vincent Chow, spokesperson for the DPP, and there's more from Taiwan coming up later in the program.
Distribution of the BBC World Service News Hour in the U.S. is made possible by American Public Media, producer and distributor of award-winning public radio content. APM, American Public Media, with support from BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 25,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone. BetterHelp.com/public.
Good morning. It's 9:30 at WAMU 88.5, 36 degrees in Reston, 37 in Bowie and D.C. Here's Washington Post meteorologist